It began as an excavation no one expected to matter, a quiet academic project buried beneath history and indifference. But when the first slab of marble was lifted in the governor's estate at Belle Hollow, Virginia, the air itself seemed to shiver, as if the past had been holding its breath for 2 centuries. The discovery was meant to be routine, a survey before the mansion's renovation. Instead, what they found beneath its polished floors shattered the illusion of civility surrounding Governor Nathaniel Carrington. Behind a collapsed wall lay a sealed chamber, no larger than a chapel. The air that escaped was metallic and wrong. Lantern light revealed rows of preserved figures, seated upright, hands bound, faces frozen in suffering. They were not skeletons. Their flesh clung to the bone as though time had stopped at the moment of death. Linen fragments still covered them. Some bore crude tags instead of names. Among the dust were syringes, copper tools, and wax-sealed notebooks. The Department of Historical Preservation called it a possible burial site of enslaved workers. But those who had seen it knew better. This was no burial. It was an experiment. Dr. Evelyn Ross, the lead archaeologist, noticed the precision, identical poses, symmetrical spacing, deliberate arrangement. On the wall, a Latin phrase was carved, Vita per scientiam, mors per ordinem. Life through knowledge, death through order. Leaks soon revealed state-sealed instruments, jars of unknown fluids, and vials containing preserved human hair. The story darkened. Someone in power had used human lives for medical progress. The 1803 census listed 34 enslaved workers at Belle Hollow, yet only 19 graves were recorded. The rest, labeled as runaways, had never left. Evelyn searched the archives. Every record of Carrington's medical interests had vanished. It wasn't loss. It was erasure. When a journalist published early photos, another truth surfaced. Each body had a precise incision beneath the sternum. In the dust lay a copper plaque. Experimental Division, Commonwealth Medical Project. The revelation spread like fire. The site was sealed, federal agents intervened, and Evelyn was dismissed. But before leaving, she took one wax-sealed notebook. It had no name, only clinical sketches and notes signed NC. The final line read, "Subjects unresponsive to final dose. Preservation successful. Consciousness uncertain." That phrase echoed in her mind long after the mansion went dark. As she looked back at Belle Hollow, a shadow moved behind an upper window, still silent, almost human. And Evelyn understood at last. The marble above hadn't been built to seal the dead away. It had been built to keep them in. The mansion of Belle Hollow stood silent under a pale Virginia sky, its once grand facade now nothing more than a shell, elegant, decayed, and heavy with secrets. But silence here was deceptive. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of something waiting, something that had been buried, but not forgotten. Dr. Evelyn Ross could not sleep. The image of the preserved bodies haunted her like a recurring fever dream. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw their faces, still dry and impossibly human. She had been ordered to withdraw from the investigation, but the truth had already attached itself to her, like dust she couldn't wash off. And the more she tried to walk away, the louder the whisper of the past became. Through her quiet contacts at the state archives, she began to gather what she wasn't supposed to see. Old correspondence, microfilmed records, forgotten memoranda. Letters written in elegant ink between Governor Nathaniel Carrington and the First Virginia Board of Health. The words were sterile, political, careful. But buried in the language of progress was something else. A pattern of obsession. Mentions of biological endurance, human trial specimens, and a project referred to only as Division 9, There were no official records of Division 9. No financial accounts, no medical publications, nothing that proved it existed. Yet one letter carried the governor's personal seal. It authorized the controlled acquisition of subjects from plantation holdings for experimental purposes. And at the bottom of the page, beneath the flourish of a signature, was a single initial. N.C. Governor Nathaniel Carrington, the same man now immortalized in marble statues across Virginia as a reformer, a visionary, a man of science. The more Evelyn read, the colder her blood ran. The governor hadn't been sponsoring research. He had been conducting it. The crypt was not an accident. It was the end point of a state experiment that treated human life as a disposable tool. In the archives, she found another name, Dr. J.C. Rowan. He appeared nowhere in medical directories, no public mentions, no journals. But hidden in the asylum records of Richmond was a short, incomplete file. A dismissed physician charged with unauthorized anatomical procedures. His sentence was commuted by the authority of the governor. Evelyn pieced the fragments together, the medical tools, the tagged corpses, the Latin inscription on the crypt wall, life through knowledge, death through order. These weren't random deaths. They were organized, studied, perfected. Then she found something even worse. A faded shipping manifest dated 1803, describing 3 sealed crates sent to Division 9 Medical Storage. The destination listed, Belle Hollow, East Subcellar. But there was no record of a subcellar in any renovation plan. The official blueprints ended at the crypt level. Everything below had been erased. That night, driven by a mix of fear and compulsion, Evelyn returned to Belle Hollow. The estate was closed off by fencing, the windows boarded, but she knew where to go. The east wing, where the marble floors had buckled inward as if hiding something beneath. Inside, the air was heavy and stale, carrying the faint scent of iron. She followed the faint trace of a wall repair, bricks that didn't quite match. When she scraped the surface, she uncovered carved lettering, Divisionae non mortui. Division 9, not dead. Her flashlight trembled as she pried away the last brick. Behind it, a narrow stone staircase descended into darkness. A slow draft rose from below, damp and metallic, whispering across her face like breath. She stepped down, one slow, shaking motion at a time. At the bottom, her light met a room that didn't belong to the 1800s, a chamber of iron and glass. The tables were lined with rusted instruments, thin copper tubing, and shattered jars. The smell was sharp and chemical, even after 2 centuries. But in the center stood something untouched by decay, a glass containment box framed in brass, fogged from within. For a moment she thought it was empty. Then she saw it, the faint impression of a face pressed against the inner glass, eyes open, mouth frozen mid-breath, the skin pale and preserved, like wax left too long in the sun. Evelyn staggered back. Her flashlight flickered. The silence thickened. And then, a sound, soft, irregular, almost impossible. A tap, once. Then again, like fingers against glass. She turned her light toward the wall and saw a plaque identical to the one found in the crypt above. Commonwealth Medical Project, Division 9. And beneath it, scratched into the metal by an unsteady hand, "They hear us still." Her heartbeat drowned everything else. The tapping grew louder, closer, not chaotic, but rhythmic, almost deliberate. She ran. The stairwell seemed to close behind her, the air thickening as she climbed, every breath like a scream she couldn't release. When she burst into the cold dawn air, the world above felt no safer, because now she understood. The marble crypt wasn't meant to protect the living from the dead. It was meant to protect the living from the reactive, and whatever was sealed beneath Belle Hollow was never meant to sleep. By morning, the discovery at Belle Hollow had already become a ghost story. The state issued a quiet statement, a containment of hazardous materials, and the estate was sealed behind tall fences in silence. But Evelyn knew better. Bureaucracy was just another kind of grave, built to bury the truth under the weight of official language. Her phone rang that afternoon, an unknown number, no caller ID. A flat male voice warned her to stop asking questions about Division 9. He knew where she worked, what she'd taken, even what time she'd left the archives. The call ended before she could answer, leaving only the faint sound of breathing on the line. That night, she sat alone in her apartment. The envelope containing the old documents spread across her table like a map of damnation. Each piece pointed to the same conclusion. The experiments had not ended in the 1800s. They had simply changed names, moved locations, buried themselves inside modern institutions. The last file she found, a faded report dated 1962, described a new project under the Department of Health. The code name, Continuum. Its purpose, preservation of biological cognition post-mortem. The language was identical to the governor's original notes. Evelyn realized then that the marble crypt beneath Belle Hollow wasn't the only one. Division 9 had evolved, spreading through time like a parasite wearing the face of science. The preserved bodies weren't mistakes. They were prototypes, and the modern program was continuing their work. When she went to the archives the next morning, her access card no longer worked. The staff avoided eye contact. Her name had been erased from the project list. But what frightened her most was the new security notice pinned on the entrance door. Belle Hollow site, transferred to federal jurisdiction, personnel restricted. The government had taken control, again. She returned home, her pulse heavy, her mind racing. At her doorstep lay a small brown package with no return address. Inside, wrapped in wax paper, was a single Polaroid photograph. It showed the same containment chamber she had seen underground, only now the glass was empty. Beneath it, in handwritten ink, Subject 14, reactive phase complete. Evelyn dropped the photo, her hands trembling. She looked toward her window, and for the briefest second, she thought she saw a reflection move, not outside, inside the room, just behind her. When she turned, there was nothing, only the soft echo of tapping, faint, familiar, somewhere deep within the walls. And as the night closed around her, she finally understood the terrible truth. Division 9 had never been about studying death. It had been about mastering it.